2 billion cups of coffee are drunk every single day. It is the most consumed psychoactive substance on Earth, the second most traded commodity after oil, and for hundreds of millions of people, the quiet anchor of every morning. It is also quietly, methodically dismantling the ecosystems that make it possible and taking hundreds of species with it on the way down. The drink you can't live without is engineering the conditions of its own disappearance, and most of the people pouring it have no idea. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm talking about coffee. And coffee's origin story is something that most people have never heard of. It is not a crop that was domesticated on flat agricultural land, but it evolved in the highland forests of Ethiopia, where it grew as an understory plant beneath a full forest canopy. Its entire biology is calibrated to that environment. It needs shade, it needs altitude, it needs the specific temperature regulation that intact forest canopy provides. For centuries, coffee was grown the way it evolved, under trees, inside functioning forest ecosystems. Those shade plantations were effectively managed forests. They supported birds, insects, mammals, and reptiles at levels comparable to wild forests. The coffee and the biodiversity coexisted. Then, in the 1970s and 80s, under pressure to increase yields, the industry largely abandoned shade growing in favor of sun cultivation, clearing the canopy, planting coffee in open monoculture rows, and flooding the plants with chemical inputs to compensate for the biological support the forest used to provide for free. Yields went up, but forests came down, and the species that lived in them had nowhere left to go. The forests that produced the world's finest coffee, so the highland regions of Ethiopia, Colombia, Guatemala, Vietnam, and Sumatra, are among the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, but they are also among the most threatened. For example, the Sumatra highlands, home to some of the world's most prized Arabica varieties, are the last habitat of the Sumatran orangutan, the Sumatran tiger, and the Sumatran elephant, all critically endangered. Deforestation for coffee and palm oil has reduced their habitat by over 80% in the last 40 years. These species exist nowhere else. When the forest goes, they go with it, permanently and completely. Here is where the story turns on itself, because coffee isn't just threatening other species, but it is itself becoming endangered, and the two facts are directly connected. Wild coffee species, there are over 120 of them, represents the genetic library that commercial coffee depends on for resilience. When disease strikes a crop, when climate shifts alter growing conditions, when new pests emerge, it is the genetic diversity stored in wild species that plant scientists turn to for solutions. Wild coffee is the insurance policy against the catastrophic failure of the cultivated varieties that supply the entire global industry. However, due to deforestation, wild coffee species could themselves become critically endangered, putting industrial coffee production at risk. Every morning, 2 billion people perform the same small ritual. They reach for warmth, for alertness, for the quiet comfort of something familiar. But the cup in your hand is the end point of a supply chain that begins in some of the most extraordinary ecosystems on Earth. However, these are forests that are disappearing, species that are vanishing, and a wild genetic library that is being erased. The question is whether we can hold both things at once. On one side, the genuine pleasure of the ritual, and on the other side, the genuine cost of the system that delivers it, without flinching away from either. That was it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, come back next week for the next video. See you!